Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Condo Insider. My name is Jane Sugimura, and the show is about people who live and work in condominiums. And thank you for joining us today. The topic of our show today is what's up at the 2023 Legislature, proxy bills, the have or have not. I mean, the issue is, do you want proxies or don't you want proxies? And there are people who want proxies and people who absolutely hate proxies. And to join me in the conversation, the discussion on that topic is Mike Golojuch. He's the president of the AOAO Palahua Townhouses in Makakilo. Hi, Mike.
Aloha, Jane.
Hi.
Glad to be with you this afternoon.
Well, thanks for being here. And how long have you been on the board over there at AOAO Palahua Townhouses?
I've been on the board for about 27 years.
Wow. And so you're familiar with the use of proxies at annual meetings, right?
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Right.
Annual meetings and special meetings if you need them, but we haven't had any.
But, this is something that you do. You go through every year with your association.
That's
Have
true.
You ever had a problem at your association with proxies?
No, the proxies itself, no, not a problem. Sometimes making sure we get the quorum, but we've always been able to get it, and we remind them, hey, we need your proxy, whoever you give it to. And so we have not had a problem with getting proxies.
Well, why don't we talk about, for people who don't know, maybe somebody who just bought a unit in a condominium.
Okay.
What is a proxy?
Well, every owner at the annual meeting has a right to vote on board members and other issues that come up before the townhouse that they need to vote on. And sometimes an owner can't be there for a variety of reasons. It could be because they're sick, whatever the reason. And a proxy allows them to give their proxy to someone else to vote on their behalf at that meeting. So their voice is heard at that meeting through someone else. And they have a choice. They can either just give it to them and let them vote their conscience, or they can direct them, hey, on certain issues, this is the way I'd like you to vote. But at least they get to vote at those meetings. And that's what a proxy does for an owner. And they can give it to the board as a whole. They can give it to the individual board members. They can give it to for quorum purposes only. Maybe they don't want to vote on anything, but they want to make sure that they have a quorum for the meeting, or they can write in, and it can be anybody that they can give that proxy to, as long as they're old enough and they can be there and vote for him.
Okay, and this proxy, it's a form, right, that goes out with the notice of the annual meeting. So
yes,
if you're an owner of a condominium, and let's say you just bought a condominium maybe 6 months ago, and now it's annual meeting time, so you get a notice in the mail, and
Right.
It's usually from the managing agent
Correct.
of the association, and it has a notice of an annual meeting, and it has the agenda, and it has some other documents that are required, and
Right.
There's a proxy.
Correct.
And the proxy basically says, you fill it out and send it in. But what if you plan on going to the meeting?
I tell even my board members, I always tell them, please fill out the proxy, because the managing agent needs to know if we're going to have a quorum for that meeting, because, it costs an association additional money if you have to continue the meeting and you don't have a quorum. So yes, everybody should send in a proxy just to make sure that we have a quorum. And when they show up at the meeting, they sign in, and then that proxy is void and they get to vote themselves. But yes, I always remind our people, please send in your proxy.
Right. That's good. And we have people who are, concerned that, it's up to the association to make sure that the owners, fill these forms out and send it in. But, it's an owner's choice. If they don't want to fill out the proxy, they don't have to.
No, they don't.
I know it's a concern. I mean, and lately, I don't know what it is, but, we never used to have a problem, having a quorum. But the last maybe 2 or 3 years, and it may have been because of the pandemic, we were scrambling to get
Yes.
our 50%. So even more so, I think, on my board, I mean, we were basically on the phone and talking to neighbors and telling them to send in their proxies, and that was really important. and they say, "Oh no, I'm going to be at the meeting, and so I don't have to send it in." And we say, "No, you have to send it in."
Yes. And
What if you get sick, or something happens last minute and you don't show up, right? And then we don't have a quorum, and
yes,
then that means that we have to, reschedule, and then it costs the association a ton of money to, redo the notices and reschedule the meeting.
you're right, 100% correct in all of that. And I've had it happen where I sent in my proxy. I planned to be at the meeting, and something came up, and I couldn't be at the meeting, but they had my proxy, and so that and they had a quorum, so that and my vote got counted.
Right. Okay. So, you mentioned too, when you were talking about the proxies, that this proxy form has different choices on it, right? They
Correct.
have boxes that you can check. And
And that
so
is
what
correct.
does it mean when they check the box to the board as a whole?
It
What
just
does
means
that mean?
that means that they're allowing the board to vote as a whole on those proxies that they receive. And, the board votes what they think is best for the association, because that's their fiduciary responsibility to do so. So the homeowner, they must be happy with the board because they're allowing the board to vote on their behalf, and which is one of the four choices they have.
And then there's another choice too, where the proxy goes to the board members in
Correct.
equal portions. And
That's
so explain what that option is all about.
And that option allows, depending on how many proxies they have, the managing agent gives to them, and they each get, and that way they get to vote separately on what they feel, whether it's on, the board members that they're voting on, or one of the resolutions, or whatever else that's coming up that has to be voted on at the annual meeting. And they get to vote on that as an individual board member instead of as a whole, where they get together and they have to agree. Each board does it a little differently, but I know on our board, we just went through it and said, okay, do we all agree on number one, number two, depending on how many vacancies, say you're voting for board members. And that's the main difference between those two.
Okay, and so what that does is it basically it means that if you can't make the meeting, if you're the owner and you can't make the meeting, that you either trust the board as a whole or you trust the board members, to make a good decision on your behalf.
That's
right?
correct. That's correct.
And then there's the option about quorum only. What does that mean?
That means that you want to allow your proxy to be given and to have you counted at the meeting. But when it comes to voting on anything, whether it's on board members or resolutions or issues that have come up, you can't vote on them, or they can't vote your proxy. It just means that, hey, you're there for quorum purposes only. So, and and we have
So
some
that means
people
that the meeting can go forward.
That's true. That's 100% correct. That's why, that even though we prefer that they choose somebody, but hey, if they want to say quorum only, that's great, as long as we get the quorum then for the meeting.
Right. And then the last one is, you said that there's a blank. You can fill in the name. So you can fulfill it. You can give that proxy and name somebody in your family, or
Right.
your neighbor,
That's
or
right.
if you're an investor, your tenant.
Right.
Right.
That's
and,
correct.
And that person can go to the meeting and vote cast the vote for you
That's
for any
correct.
issue that comes up.
That's right. Yeah, that's 100% correct. The only requirement I know is they have to be at least 18 years old. They have to be of legal age to vote. So besides that, yeah, you can assign that proxy to anybody that you think that you want to represent you. Now, one of the things, and you've probably seen, it never happened at our board, but I've heard this before. Some people even hire a parliamentarian to come sit in their place, which they can do as the proxy.
Right? They can. And so the proxy really allows someone else to cast your vote at the annual meeting for issues that are on the agenda. And
That's
usually the issues that are on the agenda are things like voting for board members. And approving the retention of the managing agent.
That's right.
Right.
And then the tax rollover.
Or the tax rollover, right?
Yeah.
Which is very, very important.
It is. That one is a big one.
Right. And I guess the big thing is to vote for directors.
That is the first thing. Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's usually I mean, that's the first part of your agenda after the introductions and all that is that, and the president's report is to vote on the directors.
Right. And one of the complaints I guess we hear, and I haven't seen it done, but we have, there are some owners who who have and there are these bills in the legislature now. And it happens, is they're perennial bills. They get introduced every year, and they always seem to die. But what it does is, I think it demonstrates that you have people out there who are frustrated with the system,
Yes.
right? And
yes, I do.
so you have bills like there's a bill this year which has been deferred, but I think that's in the House side. I think there's still it's still alive on the Senate side.
I think so.
That says that on the proxy, you should delete the option to give it to the board as a whole. Right? There's a bill saying that, and the rationale is, because the board is corrupt, and they use this as a means to stay in power.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, have you experienced that in your 27 years on the board?
No, I haven't. Now, I mean, some people may not like the board members for whatever reason. Maybe they raised the maintenance fees because they had to raise the maintenance fees, but still people don't like it and that, or whatever the case may be. And so they get upset and they see that the proxies are, they go to the board. Now I can't do anything. Well, hey, if you really don't like who's on the board and you want some changes, then you have the right to go out and collect the proxies yourself from the homeowners. You can go and ask for their proxy and have them assigned to you as an owner. If they do, great. And then if you have sufficient proxies, you can make changes. You can have other people elected if you don't like the people that are currently on the board. But truthfully, I haven't seen the problem. I do know on the larger the associations, that's a lot more work because, they got to get more votes that way. But if you have other people that are like-minded, you get together. And I tell you what, I've seen it done, not at my townhouse association, but our community association. So I know it can be done.
Right. And, you bring up a good point. Part of the process, at the annual meetings is that the managing agent posts a notice that
Right.
says, if you want to solicit proxies, right, you
Yes.
need to contact us to get the owners list. And then the managing agent will give the person, and I think you have to sign a declaration to say that you're not going to use, if you get the owners list, they don't want you to go and sell it,
That's
right,
true.
or use it for commercial purposes.
That's right.
And the owners list does not include phone numbers or email addresses, because that's kind of, those are privacy,
Right.
issues. And I don't know of any association that gives out phone numbers and email addresses without the consent of the owners. But
That's
what
true.
you will get if you ask, if you want to solicit proxies, is that the managing agent will give you an owners list with addresses, and
right.
you can, and it's like a political campaign, right?
Yeah.
So you can write to all the owners and you can put a flyer in and say, hey, my name is John Doe and I'm running for the board, and these are my positions and this is why I want to run. And
That's
so
true.
that's the whole reason for the solicitation of proxies, right?
That is 100% correct. And you're right. Everybody has the right to do that. In fact, our notice for our townhouse, our initial notice just went out this past week. And on there it says, hey, we will be soliciting proxies. And if you want to solicit proxies, contact our managing agent and, just like you mentioned. So they have the right, and they have the right to write up their statement why they want the proxies, and it's published along with everything else.
Right. And so it's, so for people who say that, the proxy system is unfair to owners, I probably don't understand the law.
No.
Right. Because it can, if they know, how to, if they're familiar with the system, they know that under the Hawaii law, they can solicit proxies. That means that they could get an owner's list.
Right.
They can get all the mailing addresses, and they can contact every single owner in that association. It may cost them some money because you've got to pay for stamps and, stationery, right? To get your message out. But,
Right.
there's nothing to stop you from doing it. If you,
That's
all
right.
you have to do is contact the managing agent and say, and fill out a statement saying, I'd like to have, I want to solicit proxies. And I because I'm running for the board, or my neighbor is running for the board and I want to help him. Right.
That's
And so I would like to have an owner's list. And
Yep.
for that reason, the managing agent will provide that particular owner with the owner's list with all the mailing addresses. And so then they can start their campaign.
Right. You're correct. And that's good. And then, that's the way the law is written, and it is open to everybody to do that, and not just, the board itself. And it gives everybody the opportunity to go out there and get proxies and make changes if they think changes need to be made.
Right. And I can remember many years ago, when somebody came to me and asked me to help them, get on the board. I mean,
Right.
that's what we did. It was like a campaign. First of all, we got a picture. We did a photograph, and we did a flyer,
Yeah.
and we put, the names of, we were running a ticket. We wanted these three members, three owners to be,
Okay. Yes.
elected.
Okay.
And so we
Right.
had a nice picture of the three of them, and we
Yep.
had their names and a little bit of the biographical information. And on the back, we had, on the back of the flyer, we had the reasons why they were running and why people should vote for them. And then we did a mailing, right? It's like a campaign. You
Yes.
sit in a room and you stuff envelopes and
Sure
you put
is.
stamps on them, and out they go, right? And
Yep.
basically, and what we did is we put a proxy in every envelope and a return return envelope, and we asked them to sign the proxy and return it to us. And
Very smart.
so that allowed us, to get the proxies, for the annual meeting. And we ended up getting two of our three members, two of our three elected. So
That's good.
so I know it works.
Yeah, it does work. Yeah, and I've seen it in some of the other associations that I may not be a member of, but I've heard in different things. And that's what they did. Basically the same thing. They went out and did the campaigning and made the changes and got the people on that they were pushing for, which is
Right.
the way you do it. It's like you said, it's a campaign.
Right. And, so proxies can be a good thing,
Yes.
and it can result in change, but
Right.
it also allows voters, it also allows owners who cannot be at a meaning for any reason to,
That's right.
be able to cast a vote,
And that's the
and
important thing.
choose the leadership that, they want to lead the association for at least the next year.
That's right. And that's important, because that way every owner still gets their vote, even though they give it to someone else to vote for them. That's their choice, and that way they get to be heard at the annual meeting, or if there's a special meeting, that would be the same situation.
Right. And I guess, there's some people who, who are maybe disgruntled and, who don't like the proxy system. But I guess for those people, I would say maybe your message doesn't resonate with the owners. Maybe that's why you didn't get the proxies or the vote. And that's how, most systems work. You have to go out there and campaign and basically sell yourself or sell your idea, to the, majority of the owners. And if, they don't agree with you, that's the breaks.
That's true.
Right. It doesn't mean that the system is corrupt. It just means that you don't have enough people who are like-minded like you are, and so they're not going to, support your issue or your candidate. That's all it means.
Yes.
I don't think there's a negative, there shouldn't be a negative connotation with proxies.
No, there shouldn't be. They should be what the people, that's what they're doing. They're out there to make sure that their vote is heard, and they do that if they can't be there in person through the proxy that they have.
And, the fact that you have a lot of people submitting proxies to the board as a whole, I guess, that's an indication that they're pretty happy with, the way the things are. Because if they weren't happy, if they were, if they were upset at, how some of the decisions that the board made, I don't think you'd get a lot of proxies going to the board as a whole.
No, you wouldn't. And that's why, like you said, and that's why I would say a majority of people who do give it to the board do give it as a whole, because they are happy with the board. And those who give it to individual board members that, they might just say, oh, that's the way I like to see things done. But hey, whatever, it's your choice on which block you choose to mark on that proxy form.
Right. And, right now there are two bills. In fact, there are two bills that are pending. And I think whoever drafted them didn't understand the existing law. They're basically saying, let's do away with all proxies and just make it a mail ballot or an online ballot. And so that means that you have to fill out the paper ballot or be there online and vote. And if you're online, I guess you have to, you have to have a certain code for the meeting and whatever. But what do you see? Do you think that's better than proxies?
No, it's only good for those who can actually make the meeting. If you can't make the meeting, and even a paper ballot, how does that work for board members? Because you have to have a certain percentage, for them to get elected. And, if you have more people running than the vacancies, you have to have multiple ballots. And even electronically, that can work for those who are actually present. But if you've given your proxy to someone else, that way your vote gets counted every time because you're right there. That person is there for you, and you get to vote for the people on each and every ballot, which might not happen in the other two situations, whether it's paper or electronic.
Right. And, right now there's a dispute too, I think among condo attorneys as to how to do electronic voting, mainly because, when you do it online, there's so much, the technology is there, but there's so many ways that, it can be, played. In other words, you don't always know that the person who's voting is really an owner.
That's true.
Right?
You wouldn't. No. It could be anybody that had access to that code that was, doing it at the computer.
Mm-hmm. And so, there is that concern. So right now, the electronic voting is a work in progress, I think. I think it's something that everybody wants to do, mainly because, it's a lot easier sitting home in your, in your living room in front of your computer, right?
That's true.
Then, getting into your car or walking down to the, the community,
right.
center, to attend an annual meeting.
Right.
Right. But, I think we're going to get to the point where we can, do electronic meetings and electronic voting. But and then, people can vote from their phones. But even still, I think, a proxy would probably be better because you do that and you authorize somebody else who's going to actually be at that meeting, whether it's electronically or in person, to cast your vote for different issues.
And that's true. And like you said, electronic voting will be and is coming on, and this is being used more often. But for the annual meeting, until it's perfected, a proxy is the best way. And truthfully, you could still have a proxy once electronic voting begins, once they have it the right security set up. So they identify, that you are the proxy for the person you're supposed to be a proxy for, and you get all the information in. So I see that coming down the line. It will happen someday, but it's still a proxy. Even, you're giving it to someone else to vote for you because you can't be there.
Right.
And I think that's still important.
Right. So, these bills, they get introduced every year. I mean, I think every year we have some form of a proxy bill that either wants to get rid of the board as a whole. I mean, that one seems to be perennial. Every year there's one. And or getting rid of the proxies altogether. Why do you think that, we keep getting these bills? I mean, to me, I'm down at the legislature every year. I mean, we always have these bills every year.
And I think it is an individual homeowner runs into a problem in their particular association, and it does happen, and they, for whatever reason, they themselves get frustrated because they can't get the board to change. But truthfully, again, it goes back to organizing and getting out there and getting proxies for yourself. Because if you do that and you get other ones that are not happy for whatever reason, then guess what? You're going to end up having sufficient proxies to overturn board actions that you disagree with. And so, yeah. And I definitely believe that's why you get those bills every year, because there are people that are unhappy for whatever reason. So they think, oh, well, this is one way to fix it. And I don't think that's necessarily the best way to fix it.
Right. And I think this is something that, you cannot be thinking about just at annual meeting time. I mean, it's something that you've got to work out through the year and maybe, develop support in your community and find out who in the community thinks like you and agrees with you on issues, so that at least when it comes time to for the annual meeting, when you actually vote for the people who have to implement this stuff, you have a following, or you don't have a following.
Yeah, that's right. And it is important. And you do have, if there is problems, you're going to find other like-minded persons in that community that will go along with you. And you just have to make the effort to go ahead and round up those proxies. And like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. If it could take you a year, could take you a couple of years, if depending on how large your project is and what people think and all that, but it can be done. And that's what the proxy is there to help you out do in the same way. So
right, because what I told you, the example I gave you before, where we got, we did the campaign and we got 2 people elected.
Right.
And so we had to repeat the campaign the following year to get 2 more elected. I mean, it took us maybe 3 years to get a majority on the board. Right. And that's how you change the board.
That's true. That 100% correct. Because, people, hopefully they realize that not all the board members get elected every year. They spread them out depending on how many are on the board. And, if you get 9, it's usually 3 per year that get elected, so you spread it out and that's done so there's some continuity in the board, but it allows time and for change too. So it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen all in 1 year, but it can happen, like you said.
Right. It's just something that people have to work on, and you have to work on it and over time, and talk to people in your community. And so really proxies are not the boogeyman that everybody makes it out to be. So I don't know why we have to deal with these proxy laws. And the legislators kind of shake their heads, especially the ones that have been there a while. It's like, didn't we deal with this last year, and didn't we defer it last year? So why is it on my agenda this year again? And it's kind of embarrassing when you have to when you tell them, and when you have to meet with them and deal with these bills that are pending. Right. But at least one is dead, and we think the other one may not get hearings. I understand. So they may not get hearings because of what happened in the House. So so maybe we won't have to deal with proxies. But I'm so glad that you were on my show today to discuss proxies, because it's an important subject, and like you said, it's not something that's bad. In fact, it's something that's good. And if you are unhappy with the board, you have to learn how to use it to your advantage.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. And and thank you for having me on this afternoon. I appreciate it. And
thank you for being here. Yeah. And I want to thank our viewers, for joining us for this episode of Condo Insider. And we hope you learned something. We hope that this was useful information, and that you'll join us next week for another episode of Condo Insider on Thursday. I think it's on Fridays at 3:00. And again, thank you for joining us today. Mahalo and aloha.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.